Jonathan Taylor, welcome to Acquiring Minds.
Thank you, Will. Long-time listener, as they say, first-time caller.
Well, it's a thrill for me to have you here, Jonathan. We at Minds Capital actually looked at your deal and we declined. A year and a half later,
Yeah.
revenue is up 40% or so. And so you are quickly becoming our one that got away. So, no, but you're a great sport to come on the pod, Jonathan, and we're going to unpack some of the issues that we saw in the business, and you'll tell us how true or not they have proved to be. We have a lot to cover. Let's dive in. First things first, Jonathan, how did you come to want to buy a business?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am originally from Orlando, Florida, the youngest of three kids. Growing up, my parents owned and operated a few small businesses as a means to just help generate some additional income. So that planted the seed of entrepreneurship. I studied finance in undergrad and always had an idea of one day owning and operating my own thing, but I didn't know exactly what that meant. So, like a lot of people, I went up to Wall Street, joined Morgan Stanley, did investment banking for a bit of time. That then led me down a finance track, doing FP&A at a few places. Also got my MBA at Columbia, and then spent the past decade or so at Google and then in DoorDash in a variety of operational roles. Along the way, just breadcrumbs of this ETA were planted. So one of my really good friends, Michael Curry, he was in business school at the same time as me. He launched his own search fund, and so saw his story. I had a professor, Professor Gregory Fairchild, who also came in, taught a case. He was an adjunct professor from UVA, taught a case about one of his students that actually went out and bought a company. And then in my post MBA career, had a lot of my classmates that actually went out and purchased companies. So really just saw people have that as an option of pursuing entrepreneurship, and over time just thought I would be pretty well suited to actually help grow something that was well established for something starting off from 0 to 1.
Mm-hmm. But you were at DoorDash most recently before you actually decided to do the hard pivot into ETA, correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Yeah, I was leading the product partnerships team there, and that actually spurred a lot of entrepreneurial interest in me again because saw a lot of small business owners that own multiple franchises, and just saw how they were successfully able to own and operate their businesses. Had opportunity to meet many of them, and so really just kind of really respurred that. Why not me? I can go out and do something like they were doing. Perhaps not own multiple chains of restaurants, but there's definitely a small business out there for me that I can own and operate.
Mm-hmm. And so how long would you say you'd been in tech? How many years?
About 14, 15 years between DoorDash and Google. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So a real tenure, especially in tech land where, there a lot of people come and go.
Yeah. Well, the initial thought was I would join Google, be there 2-3 years, and go off and do the startup thing and be on the cover of Fortune at one time. But ultimately, I just found
that was your plan. That was my plan too. What a coincidence.
Well, here we are.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and ultimately stayed there for over a decade because I was just working on some really cool, exciting projects and met some really great people and just constantly was able to do some fun stuff. But yeah, ultimately I just made the decision that for the next phase of my career, wanted to pursue more ETA, different types of businesses.
And was there something that prompted the decision that you took it when you did?
Yeah. I was approaching 40. And so like a lot of people, was having what am I doing professionally in my life? Is this the direction I want to head in? And it just felt like a very much now or never type time for me to pursue entrepreneurship. My family was pretty established. We moved back to Los Angeles where my wife is from. So we were planning roots here. Had some great career experiences. We were able to save up some resources. My wife is pretty secure in her role too, doing very, very well in her career. And she was just very supportive. And so it just felt like now was the time to do it. And if I didn't do it right now, it would be harder to do much later.
Yeah. But you did have a decent sized family. How big is your family?
I have 3 daughters aged 9, 7, and 5. And I often have them listening to this podcast in the car. So hello, Ruby, Ella, and Sophia.
That's awesome. But my point is Ruby and Sophia. And what's the third's name?
Ella.
That your dad
Okay.
has taken quite a big risk here to do this. When you say the now or never moment, for a lot of people, that's when they're totally unattached and they don't have obligations.
Yeah.
Of course, your obligations were probably going to be only become more
Mhm.
acute as the years marched on. But but props to you for still kind of being willing to step out and do it. It sounds like you guys were pretty financially secure.
Mhm.
You had a balance sheet from your years in tech. Your wife had a great job, so you weren't, you had resources, but you were also there were real mouths to feed here. Hello again, daughters.
Definitely real mouths to feed, and always things at Target to buy. But certainly that was a
Mm.
consideration, and I took that and that factored into my approach to how I went about my search. And so, we probably may not have time to get into the depth of it, but did a self-funded search, and I did it while working full time.
Talk to us a little bit about that because that does flout the conventional wisdom that to be a successful self-funded searcher, you need to be giving it your full time attention.
Yeah, yeah, and again, this goes back to having like some really good friends and that are now mentors. So, Michael's business partner Keith is a dear friend, and he just really challenged me along the way. It's like, do you really have to like leave your job to do it, or like let see how far you can get with your search before you do that, because you would be giving up quite a lot to do that. And so just know that you're in a very very fortunate position, but you could probably accomplish a lot, particularly given that you're doing a regional search. You're intent on staying in the Los Angeles area. So there's real opportunity, and my job was flexible enough where I can at nights or early mornings go and have meetings with business owners and make a lot of progress on that. So that's what I did.
I wonder what Keith saw in part-time search that so many other people say, no, no, it can't be done. Of course, countless acquiring minds guests do it part-time. So maybe it's not the conventional wisdom that I'm saying it is, but you do have people who are quite vocal that it needs to be your full-time attention. Yeah. Any thoughts on like why the disconnect there?
Yeah, I can't really say why the disconnect. I can only say that it's really a personal thing for you and what matters to you. And I just knew that if I were going to be leaving a job that I really liked, that was paying me very well and I was doing well in and really enjoying, to go buy and operate a business, I wanted there to be a very very high bar for that. And so, while it may, I think some people think that if you're working and doing this part time, you're just not going to have the sense of urgency to get it done,
Hmm.
which that that may be true to some regards. But what I also say is that it also helps you maintain a high bar, because every 2 weeks you're extending your runway.
Exactly. No, I feel like this theme has come up a bunch in recent conversations and interviews where the self-funded searcher who's doing it full time with no income, cash constrained that they are, even if they have a healthy balance sheet,
Mhm.
they are just dwindling their resources week by week. And that can cloud your judgment somewhat because you're just, you just are money's going out the door, not coming in. And that can just kind of get in the way of making prudent decisions a little bit like you say in terms of standards of quality of business, how much you might spend on a Q of E report and due diligence are kind of the classic too.
Yeah, yeah, and I would say that that's absolutely true, because I even felt that is part of my search. Because there'd be times where my wife was really my first deal check, and I'm sure she got tired of me asking, "Hey, babe, can you see me running this type of business?" It would show the numbers. She would be like, "What are you doing, Jonathan? Like, no, this doesn't make any sense. Like, this you make more than the SDE right now, and it just like what like how does that even make sense? If you were to 5x this business, like, is that really the best use of your time?" And so I just think that again, it just was a helpful bar for keeping a higher quality bar.
Hmm. Those are sounds like a wise counsel by her. That's great. And those ideas or those businesses that you showed her that she would like completely dismissed, was it always because they were too small, or were there types of businesses or industries too where she was like, "Dude, you're not gonna. That's not a fit."
There are definitely types of businesses, but size was a factor. I mean, I think for a little bit of time, just given my experience at DoorDash, I kind of flirted with the idea of franchise ownership. But then it's like, do you really
Mm,
want to be managing like high schoolers, like, really, is that what you want to be doing? Because that's like your
Hmm.
employee base. And that wasn't like a big part of my consideration set for the business, but it actually did become. It's like, who are the actual people in the business that I'm working with day to day? What does that look like? And so it was really helpful to just have her along for the ride, because she would really fact check very quickly
Hmm.
and bring it back to reality.
Great. Jonathan, did you consider a buy side advisor, or was that even on your radar?
I did not consider a buy-side advisor primarily because I didn't know about them. But as I've listened to many of your guests that have gone that route, like it's definitely an attractive option. I did consider the traditional search route and did have a few different conversations. Again, Keith challenged me to, like, before you just go out and do this, like, you want to stay in LA, and there's generally traditional kind of frowns upon not being geographically flexible. He's like, "Why
Hmm.
don't you just go have some conversations?" So I did actually go out and talk to 10 to 15 different people, and while I found there to be some people that would be very supportive of that, ultimately, I made the decision to go to self-funded route because greater autonomy and flexibility, and also just the type of businesses that you could look at. I think there's a more open and willingness to look at a variety of things.
Say more. What do you mean? Other
Yeah,
than size, traditional search requires a certain size, pretty much. Is that what you mean, or did you mean something else?
no, I mean, like, for my specific business, and we'll probably get into it later. But I don't think like traditional search would have ever really looked at it, because there's concentration risk. There's definitely transition risk, which is existent in all businesses. But there's some new things to mind that I think just off the bat they probably would have said no to. Versus like trying to really understand in a little bit more granular details, like what's unique about this business, and are those risks that you can actually mitigate in time. Plus, I saw a lot of push towards people to like do B2B SaaS, and I just felt like uh, I don't know.
Been there,
It
done that.
feels. Yeah, exactly. It's like, if I
Mm,
want to do B2B SaaS, I'm actually like at one of the best in class like technology companies. Like, why am I leaving to do that?
yeah. Well, and then here, ChatGPT is uh, putting the fear into SaaS. So it looks
Right.
like maybe you made the right decision. What about the psychology of the different kind of psychological relationship to search that self-funded has and traditional? Say a little bit more about that, because we're going to return to it later on
Mhm.
in our conversation when we hear how you structured your deal.
Yeah, I think when you say that, you mean as the searcher or like the investor base?
As the percentage ownership
Yeah,
and flexibility. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So I just think that with self-funded search, you have the opportunity to have a greater ownership stake, and thus like have more control over the direction you want to take the company in. And I think where part of my consideration set is, like, I think I could probably structure this to have a little bit of the best of both worlds. And by that I meant, like, I felt pretty confident that I can go out and raise an investment group, or find an investment group that would like specifically help me do well in the deal that I found. Whereas, like, if you're going down the traditional search model, by and large, like, your investment group is locked in at the beginning, and they may not be the best people for that deal that you find. And so I just found that it also provided you a lot more flexibility to look at both deal types, have the flexibility that you want in terms of geography. Now, I think Sam Rosati like really has a great framework for this. I think it's like the big three, little two. And
Yep.
so I think it has the ability for you to just be more flexible and adaptable. But I will say, like, I think the traditional search model, at times people poo-poo it because of like the ownership stake, and, oh, you're just a hired CEO. And I think there's a ton of benefits, particularly at earlier stages in your career, having really experienced people invested in you and trying to help and mentor and help you grow and be successful, and have dollars on the line in a venture together. And I've seen and talked to countless people that have gone that path, and the doors that has opened, people that have actually like been successful in launching, acquiring, then selling their business, or even people that never like actually acquired a business, or people that acquired a business didn't work out. Like, they all tend to have good outcomes as long as they handled the process very well.
Hmm.
So I think it's just very attractive. I think I was just in a life stage where self-funded was a better fit for what I wanted to achieve.
Yeah. No, that's great, Jonathan. And to this critique of traditional search, airing just ahead of this episode, maybe two episodes ago by the time all of these air, will have been Edward McDonnell, who did a traditional search. And we talk about this question of autonomy or lack thereof in traditional search, which he pushes back on pretty hard. So I do think that we should look beyond the stereotypes on that, including me. We should look beyond the stereotypes about traditional search versus self-funded. Actually, and one of the points that he makes, and so I'll tee it up so you can respond now that you are a successful self-funded searcher, is that while self-funded search appears more flexible from a kind of a cap table perspective,
Mhm.
because you own certainly the majority, and sometimes upwards of 80, 90, and for the lucky few, even 100%.
Yep.
They're smaller businesses, more cash constrained. And
Mhm.
the reality of living in a small business that is cash constrained sure doesn't feel free. So you may not have investors to answer to, but the marketplace is pretty inhospitable to a business that is living check to check. Whereas in traditional search, you're much more cash rich. You've got during the search process itself, you've got the fund, which is the namesake of the model, the search
Yep.
fund. So you don't have to nickel and dime yourself about spending on Q of E or flying to meet an owner. Um, and then the intention is that you'll buy a larger business too. So once you're in your business, it in theory has $2 million plus of EBITDA to work with, and so there will be many problems, but cash tightness is probably not one of them. And feeling tight on cash is the opposite of free. It's just a different type of
Yeah.
prison.
No, no,
So
I think those
react to that.
yeah, no, I think those are very, very well said, and I think also, traditional search, the way they actually will structure the financing of the deal is more conservative. The reason, like, people are able to achieve sort of the ownership stakes that they are in self-funded search is because they're likely levering the business up more. You're putting it more
Yeah.
at risk, and so you're having more cash go out to cover your debt, and so you have less to
Yep.
do all of these other things. And it all looks good on an Excel model, but I can tell you, like, we aren't cash strapped right now. We have a lot of cash liquidity, but there are times where the bank account jumps down because you're paying that check out to a supplier, and the visceral feel of that, you will in time, like, you can't describe the emotions of that. And so, like, what I did to sort of navigate that is I just was a bit more flexible. Like, one of the things I really wanted to do well as I went about this was sleep well at night. And so, rather than try to achieve the maximum ownership stake, I actually over equitized the deal. And so brought more equity. The investor group brought more equity to the deal than necessarily I needed to close it. And I also, like, as part of it, I was a more experienced searcher, so there are some uh, ideas out there of what the traditional salary of a searcher should be. I asked for something higher. And these are all things that, hey, I knew this is what I wanted. And as part of presenting to deal to investors, like, I included all of those things, and ultimately was able to come up with a structure that helps me sleep better at night. And my deal was, I think, more conservatively financed than a lot of self-funded deals. So the senior debt was about 65% of the total debt. The seller's note is roughly 15. And the equity route is roughly 15. The rest are transaction fees. And so
Mhm.
many of I did the whole thing where you're looking at the self-funded search model, and you're doing the 5% equity that you bring to the table, and you're structuring the seller note in a way so that it counts as equity. But I'm very, very happy I did not do that, because that would have required me dipping into more of our personal resources to come to the table, which my wife was likely to veto. um, but it also, like, it would be much harder to sleep well at night having done that.
This is fantastic, Jonathan. Let me distill and that and put back to you a few things. So first of all, over-equitizing means in a capital structure where you put more equity. So any capital structure is made up of equity and debt, and it's when you put, and there's usually kind of an optimal ratio between those two,
Yeah.
of the equity and the debt. And over-equitizing meaning it means putting in more equity than is sort of optimal.
Mhm.
But so that's what it means. and finance types will try to seek the correct ratio, and sometimes that means just putting more debt onto the business just because it can support it, and it's a more efficient capital structure. So over equitizing is intentionally, knowingly,
Mhm.
having more equity in that business than is optimal. But what it gets you, as you have said now so well, is to be able to sleep at night. But it's not just an emotional byproduct. It's a reality that the business can withstand more because there's less debt
Yep.
service, so there's less of a fee that you have to come out of pocket for every month. The business has to come out of pocket for every month,
Mhm.
and probably more cash on the balance sheet too, right?
Mhm. Right. Yeah. Exactly. So I think
Going into the transaction.
yeah, yeah, and I think like you just have so we basically over equitized the deal by like roughly $250,000, and so uh could have closed the deal with much less equity, but one of the things that I heard you say there is like optimal. I think finance types will spend a lot of time modeling and all of that, trying to create the optimal deal structure. But for these small businesses, there's such a vast information asymmetry, things you don't know until you get inside the business. That I think it's optimal to have cash on the balance sheet that can help you deal with issues that may never come up, but in the event that they do, you're able to deal with those. And again, you're able to sleep well at night so that you can come back the next day and perform and show up for your team. And
Yeah,
that was the approach that I took, particularly because as I went out to the market and started talking to investors, I got a lot of positive feedback. And in the grand scheme of things, like my ownership stake, like when I was doing it, like everyone, I was like, hey, I don't model this to get like 85% because I hear all the stories come on the podcast and that's what people get. But as I took a step back, I was like, this is a really good deal. I feel comfortable with this. I like the investor group that I put together. So I now ended up with 60% ownership stake, and I can say that I've not had a bad night of sleep as a result of pursuing this path as a result.
that's great. Okay, so over equitizing sounds just like, why wouldn't anyone want to do that? Well, obviously that you got to sell some of your equity. So you made the decision in over equitizing to go from 70% ownership to 60. So that's a reduction of whatever 13-14% of
Mhm.
your ownership.
Yes.
And do you now on the inside as owner of this business feel that?
No, I haven't at all thought one day about the percent ownership of the business that I own. I definitely feel like a commitment to returning capital to my investors the long the long haul. But I don't I have never thought like, oh man, I wish I would have not done that and raised additional equity. It was the
Great.
absolute right decision.
Excellent. Excellent stuff. And it's just two things to say on that. In this in the world of finance generally, the idea that you could bring relatively little cash to a transaction, to the acquisition of an asset, whatever that asset is, real estate otherwise, and be the 60% owner,
Yeah.
that's an enormous number in almost all other kind of fields of finance or asset acquisition as I understand it. So it's still it's still
Yeah.
just an enormous amount of ownership for very very little of your own equity into it. So I point one. Point two is it's good to look at the relative decline. So going from 70% to 60%, as I said, is just really whatever that is, a
Mhm.
13-14-ish% step down. Not that material in the grand scheme of things, but at the same time, you're giving your investors, you're taking your investors from 30% to 40%. They're seeing a 33%. The investor group is seeing as a whole a 33% bump in their equity. It's much more material for them, and that's something that Nicholas James, partner in Minds Capital, will often say about self-funded searchers is that you can really, by going from 90 to 80%, for example, this is an extreme example, but from being willing to go down from 90% ownership to 80, you're effectively doubling what your investors how much your investors can participate in and how much ownership they have, while only taking yourself down whatever that is, 11%. And it's generally a good faith trade to make, and it sounds like, and that you buyer won't likely feel. So there's kind of two dynamics here. There's the one that the primary one, which is the over-equitizing to sleep better at night, to put the business on more solid footing as you get into it. That's the key point. But secondarily is this idea of there's an opportunity for a good faith gesture to your investors by not being greedy about the equity that you're offering them.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely true. And I was very fortunate to um, partner with one of my lead investor like early on in the process, and he gave me great feedback on LOI. And I'll shout him out now, Michael Jorkis. If you're ever looking at an
Mhm.
aerospace, the defense deal, like he should be your first call. He's amazing. And so he gave me some amazing feedback, and I just knew like after those sessions I wanted to work with him. And he was kind enough to open up his Rolodex and help me with the fundraising process. And through that, I actually met some other people, and they were willing to do deals that gave me better ownership stakes. But I was really committed to working with Michael and his team. And so there are multiple ways in which you can like make space to get investors bigger allocations, right? Like I could have reduced the check that I wrote to the deal because I wrote a bigger check than I needed to for the
Mhm.
SBA.
Mhm.
But again, like I don't think that sends the right signal. And so I think ultimately, like being willing to give up some greater ownership to make the deal safer, I think
Yep.
actually gives investors more confidence in you, and like actually
Yep.
to the point that you made about the making space for them to have a greater ownership in the business. They're more invested in it and all the things you outlined.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah, to that, it's another great point that you make that it kind of signals prudence, as you as a buyer, which investors will be happy to see. Really great, and yeah, Michael's great. Michael's how we met. Michael introduced us
Yes,
to you.
you did.
So he is great. Okay, Jonathan. So we haven't yet heard about the business. Anything more to say about the search? The part time, full time. What about the commute that it needed to be? Because you changed here.
Yeah, yeah. So my previously my job was work from home primarily. We have an office that's like 10 minutes from me, so I would go in from time to time, but primarily it was working from home. But this would require me to be on site, and so the business is located around 25 miles. Fortunately, it's the reverse commute. As anyone knows, like LA has some horrendous traffic, but I'm able to get up to the office in about 30 minutes, and then about 45 minutes coming home. So reasonably, not too far away. And that's something too that as you kind of embark upon one of these regional searches, I started looking at, oh, I can look at businesses down in Irvine or San Diego, and like I'll do that drive. I'm not doing that drive. Like that's just
Which
not
is
going to
how
be.
far?
Irvine in a good day is at least 1 hour, but generally with terrible traffic, it's going to be at least 2 hours every way. And San Diego is even further, significantly
Yeah.
further, probably two, three one way. So that was just like a I think I visited one business down there, and I think this is not going to ever work.
Well, it's so I this is a great point because I think a lot of self-funded searchers are like, yeah, I'll my radius is 2 hours. I think I've heard searchers have a 3 hour radius.
Yeah, I've heard that too on your
But
podcast. It's quite amazing. I don't know how they do it, but yeah,
well, and so the tip here for the listener is to do that drive
yeah,
before you think about it because I think I have a sense of what a 3 hour drive is like, and I'll knock that out, no big deal. But to be
yeah,
doing it daily or whatever, even an hour long drive daily back and forth, it's a lot. And maybe for some people it's not, but you got to try it. I too, early on when I was looking at a deal, there was a business an hour and a half away, and I did the drive, and doing the drive alone woke me up and caused me to not look at that business because
yeah,
it was not going to be tenable for me. So
right. Yeah.
we tend to overestimate the commutes that we're willing to tolerate.
Agreed. I spent a lot of years on a Google shuttle, and it's a very different thing when you're on a bus that's driving you versus when you're the one making that trek. And so there's not going to be you're not going to be able to like knock out a bunch of email or be efficient during that time. That's really going to be dead time that uh, it compounds.
I call it podcast time, but yeah, I take your point.
Yes.
All right, Jonathan, let's hear about the business that you found.
Absolutely. So the business that I found is called AEK Technology, and we are a stocking distributor. We were established in 1993. We focus on aerospace, defense, and industrial end markets. By stocking distributor, that means we have a large warehouse, we have parts on our shelves, and every day customers are coming to us looking to buy the parts that we stock. And so we have roughly 22,000 SKUs and over 3,000 parts in stock today. So we are an authorized distributor for a large defense contractor called Hutchinson. They've been around since the 1900s. They bought a company in the U.S. called Berry Control that's been around since the 1940s. They make a lot of parts for the U.S. military and other aviation, and so we are a key distribution partner for them.
Great. And people come to the location?
They don't. At times they do. At times, some people will come to. Have an urgent need. They'll come and pick up the parts directly and from our team. But primarily, we're
Yeah.
shipping
Okay.
we're shipping out
But
a bunch of
not
boxes every day.
fundamentally. It's not.
Yeah, yeah, no,
This is a warehouse that people can visit, but basically, it's a staging ground for you to then ship product on.
correct. Yes.
Great. Okay. So I heard you say Hutchinson. That is the manufacturer that you distribute for exclusively. Are there others? What does that dynamic look like? And you can tell where I'm leading you here. One of the things that we pointed out about the deal, but that I
Yeah.
now, having talked to more people in distribution businesses, it seems to be a pretty common feature in distribution businesses broadly,
Mhm.
is concentration. You're often a distributor for you've got supplier concentration. A lot of your product is for a single supplier. Talk to us about that, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually have product from a lot of suppliers, but we are what's known as an authorized distributor for multiple different divisions of Hutchinson, and that means they have given us the right to sell their products. There are times where people call themselves a distributor for a manufacturer, and what they're doing is they're just buying from perhaps other people and then selling that on, reselling it.
Mm,
But
mm.
we actually have the right to buy directly from the manufacturer, and that actually grants us a lot of different things. So there are times where we can work directly with the government and show them like, hey, we actually have a letter on the company letterhead that we are an authorized distributor. So you're not going through a bunch of resellers. So there are a lot of benefits there. But to the point, yes, they are our largest supply partner today. We work with different divisions, and something that I don't think I did a great job of expressing as we talked about and evaluated the deal was the decision maker risk. And so we work with multiple different divisions, many of whom they don't really ever talk to one another. And so roughly there are about three different divisions, and they represent about a third of sales today, and 10% is roughly from other people.
Okay, so wait, three different divisions of Hutchinson is top line, top kind of is 90%, but it's really three divisions of each 30 to 35% under that,
They're about, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Plus 10% non-Hutchinson.
Correct.
And so you use the point there, decision maker risk, I think, or gatekeeper risk.
Yep.
And so this is the more nuanced way to think about concentration risk, that it's not just the main name company that you're selling into, but how many
Mhm.
decisions really are involved. And
Yep.
so it sounds like if if you've got you've got these divisions within Hutchinson that you supply, that you sell for, they're your suppliers, and they're not even talking to each other. And so one could sever business ties with you, and the other two would carry merrily along. It's, while ostensibly 90% concentration, it's really not. It's really, you just have three different customers. And so
Yep.
how many decisions have to be made for you to win or lose business, I think, is the better way of looking at this.
Yeah.
Um,
And said differently, we actually
yeah.
have unique distribution agreements with each of the divisions. And there are different people that sign off on them and all of those things. And so we've been working with all of these divisions for over 20 years each. And so oftentimes they don't even, there are times where they actually come to us to buy parts for their other divisions because they know we'll have them on the shelf. And so that's something that I didn't fully grasp as I was evaluating the deal, but certainly like that's something that as people are looking at opportunities, it's something to try to get a higher fidelity on, like what is the decision maker concentration, because often these large companies, they're different divisions or different internal companies themselves that don't talk to one another.
Yeah. And in aerospace and defense, for example,
Yeah.
and anything that sells to the government, you could, to use an analogy here, you could talk about any business that sells to the US government. Well, the US government is total customer concentration, 100%.
Right.
But of course, what you're probably doing is selling to all different divisions within the behemoth that is the US government.
Yeah.
And so it's many different decision makers, depending on what the business customer set looks like. But that would be like a classic example. And in some ways, as you pointed out to me, like aerospace and defense, where or yeah, aerospace and defense, which may sell to the U.S. government, or one of the airplane
Mhm.
manufacturers, of which there are only a small handful of
Mhm.
big ones around the world. Um, it's also just structural to the industry itself. It's in some ways unavoidable. Say more about that. Unavoidable.
Yeah, it's just like you at a high level, there are two large scale commercial jet manufacturers, Airbus and Boeing. And so if you're generally in the space, like you're going to have some level of concentration related to those big platforms if you're on them. And so the more sophisticated way that people kind of think about this is like, what is the program that I am on, and try to get really high fidelity, because a lot of times at these companies there are different decision makers that are running the different platforms. So the different type of Boeing jets, there are different people making those supply chain decisions. And so there's at the very high level, it will be the same logo. But it's really, you gotta dig a little deeper to truly understand what is that concentration.
Mhm. Great. Now, having said all that, it still was the case that in your
Yeah,
business that you still had pretty high concentration, even with the nuance.
absolutely.
You had three different customers who represented 30 plus percent
Right.
of your supply. How did you handle that and think about that? Because that was one of the things that we flagged.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I actually flagged it to you guys too. Like, hey, this is a risk of the
Yeah.
deal, and just like
Right.
called it out. Like, this is
Yeah.
something that is a known risk that in time will need to be mitigated. And so, a few different things. So, it's part of the process, and working with the seller. He actually worked with him to meet each one of these suppliers individually and have conversations, and was able to express and share my goals and what I was looking to do, and verbally hear from them about their desire to continue working with the business on an ongoing basis. We also then were able to, with two of them, and we're in the process now, sign new agreements that extended the partnership. And what I did not really know is just the previous seller was not investing a ton of time in the actual relationships. And a lot of this just stemmed from his dad, who founded the business, actually worked at Hutchinson, and so he just knew a lot of people there. And so there was an underinvestment in the relationship part of the business, which is like, okay, that's something I can do. And so I spent a lot more time, and still do today, like trying to build relationships, understand what we could be doing together. And so we actually, with each of these different divisions, have some ongoing plans of things that we can do to grow our businesses together.
And so to make sure I got it, the way you mitigated this risk was you actually met with the suppliers
Hmm.
and signed new contracts with them, new
Yes,
agreements.
with two of them, and one's in process right now. Yes, so those were,
Hmm.
one was signed before the deal closed, one was signed like immediate, like 2 3 months after the deal closed, and one is we're working through that right now.
Hmm.
And also
And
just structurally,
mhm.
what we did is like tied the seller note to the supplier remaining with the business for the first 2 years at least.
Let's unpack that. So, seller note forgivability, a forgivable seller note
Yeah.
tied to the retention of this revenue from this customer. Can you give us more detail?
Yeah, the retention of the supplier, not the customer. So
Right.
them
Thank you.
remaining a supplier for AEK, at least for 2 years, because then after that it's like, okay, that's really on you. And so if they were to go away, then the any one of those divisions, the seller note would be forgivable.
And was it sort of proportional, like, or was it binary, like the whole
Binary.
seller note is? Oh, really? Oh, wow. And so it wasn't tied to. It was just tied to the relationship continuing. It wasn't tied to like the amount of product flowing through from one of these agreements.
Yeah,
that
yeah,
maybe
and
was
I
that?
think in credit to the seller because along the way you just maintain that hey we're such a a key customer and partner here that feel really good about this relationship and enduring and long standing. What I didn't realize at the time or know is that with each of these with the two of these three divisions we are actually a top 10 customer. And so we are a material part of their revenue, and so I think they want to continue on this. One of them so much so that we are in the process now of just working on, hey, what are the unique things we could be doing to help grow each other's business?
Yeah. Well, I said customer concentration, misspeaking. That's just what rolls off the tongue,
Yeah,
and so
yeah, yeah.
we are always talking about that. But
Mhm.
thank you for correcting me. And when we talk about distribution businesses and the concentration issues that you often encounter in them, yes, it's usually the supplier
Yeah,
concentration, not the customer concentration. So thank you for that. But you make this great point in the defense of these businesses that let's not forget, while there may be this supplier concentration, you are their their go to market. I mean, you
yeah.
are one of their key channels, so you're bringing all of this revenue and value to them. So it's probably a sturdier connection than kind of customer concentration. Supplier concentration is like you just said. I mean, they're looking at you and like, don't go anywhere. You represent millions of dollars of revenue for us.
Yeah, and I think that that's exactly right. And so I think and that also was the feedback that that I received is part of meeting with the suppliers. That hey, you're an important partner for us. If anything, all we want to do is grow. You've done a really great job. We think there are these other opportunities for you to do things to modernize the business. It was encouraging to hear the things that they suggested were exactly some of the things I had planned: new website, some certifications. That's completely true. It's these businesses, and it's often the case that companies that are focused on and good at making things, they may be good at selling them to a large customer. They're not often good at selling them to the long tail of customer, and that's the value we bring.
Oh, what a great segue. Thank you. Because yes, that is something for the uninitiated you might think about a distribution business. What value is being added exactly? Is it because aren't distribution businesses just middleman businesses, which is of course a pejorative.
Mhm.
Um, and so you've just nailed it that they are just not good at going to market. They're not good at selling at scale. Um, how, though, do you, as a distributor, differentiate from other distributors? This was one of the things that we were scratching our heads about. What is the moat or the differentiator that you can build in your business against your competitors who are would be distributors for Hutchinson?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for our product category where we kind of specialize in, it's um, shock and vibration mounts, and I didn't know what these things were prior to
I still
evaluating
don't.
this deal. Well, your mic, the thing that's actually holding it, is itself a shock mount. And so
Ah,
they're literally all over the place. Yeah, I didn't know this, but have gone down a rabbit hole of the different industries. And so now that I know this, I can't unsee it. So I was in the gym the other day and looked under the treadmill. There are lovely mounts under them. So they're just literally everywhere. If you were to
ah,
walk a manufacturing floor, the machines are generally on lovely mounts to help them maintain structures. And so there's so many different applications for these things. But one of the things that is differentiating for us is that we have engineers on staff that can help customers solve like technical questions. And so oftentimes customers will come to us with, hey, is this the right part to use for, here's my application. I believe this is the right part, but I have these additional questions. Can you guide me through that? And so we have people on staff that can help them with that. We actually will go on site to customers and do training sessions for them. And so we are not just putting parts in boxes and shipping them out. We are actually handling more technical sales in a way that is, again, a value added service to customers, but also to our supplier partner.
mhm, mhm. And that's where you differentiate, or
Yeah.
that's where you're adding value, and that's all you how you can also differentiate
That's one
against
of
your
that's
competitors.
Yeah, that's one of the
Yeah.
parts where we're
Mhm.
adding value and differentiating from our competitors. People have just known that for since AK's been around, we can go to them and they'll be able to answer our technical questions. And if the part that I want is not in stock, they can answer like what a suitable alternative is and be able to source that and supply it. And And so those are very, very valuable things to our customers.
Great, Jonathan. Well, we still have a few more characteristics of the business to talk
Yeah.
through, but we're getting far away from the acquisition, and I wanted to make sure we don't forget to hear about the numbers to the extent that you can share of the business and purchase price and so on. You've already kind of told us high level structure, but could you give us more detail?
Yeah, and I'll keep it, and I'll talk in ranges. And so the business was doing uh, mid single digit millions in revenue, for the past. And one of the things I was able to get the data room and look at the tax returns all the way since 2003, and the gross margins have been over 40% since that time. And that's the business has been remarkably steady, and so that's been through 9/11, global financial crisis. It was chugging along, growing about 3-4% throughout all of those time periods. In terms of earnings, it was roughly mid to 20% margins. And so really, really healthy business, very, very stable. And so those are things that are really encouraging. In terms of looking at, and because you touched on supplier customer concentration earlier,
Mhm.
we really didn't have any. And so one of the things that I liked about the business, there was a lot of repeat customers. So roughly every single year, over 80% of our business is from customers that were been customers in the previous year. And consistently for the past 20 years, the top 5 to 10 customers were all the same. And so that was just remarkably consistent. So I wouldn't say this is recurring, contractually recurring. It's not that. But there's a lot of reoccurring business that happens on a year-to-year basis.
And those top five customers, that's remarkable, by the way. They didn't represent too much concentration, so they were
They're,
all below whatever 15% of revenue,
they're all
something like that.
below. It would range from like 20 to 25% revenue.
Yeah, great. And so mid single digits of revenue, 20% margins. So I'm guessing in the sweet spot to the higher side of a self-funded search,
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
it's fair to say.
what we like to see in self-funded search. Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Um,
Something that, like, when I presented to my wife, she was like,
mhm.
"Okay, you can leave your job to do that."
On the point about the size of
Yeah,
business.
yeah,
Now, what about let's hear now about, the type of people working in the business.
yeah,
This is not high schoolers, working for minimum wage. The motion of a distribution business and, imagining yourself in there, whatever the day to
mhm.
day looks like, and running one and now doing it. What would you educate people on what that looks like in a distribution business?
Yeah, so we have 2 different sides of it. So we have the warehouse side, so, team members that are focused on receiving product in, inspecting that product, and then either staging it to be shipped out or to be put onto a shelf, to be part of our inventory. We then have a shipping team, so they're focused on shipping products out to customers. Then we also have a quality team that is overlooking, making sure that all the parts are conforming, and that if customers have any issues, we can address those. Then within the office, we have the sales team. So we have team members that are focused on interacting with customers and answering their solicitations. And the business has historically just operated with an inbound sales motion. So we've never actually had people go out to the field and proactively seek more business. So that's something we'll be looking to change, but that's just how we've operated today. And then we have a finance, HR function, and then we have someone focused on the logistics. So managing all of the shipments that are going out, coming in, and handling those components. I mean, one of the key things within this particular aerospace is that it's really, really, really important that you have good documentation of all of the parts and can trace them back to their OEM and all the supply chain in which the chain of custody in which they've done that. And so the business has a great history of all of the parts that we have in our inventory. And so that's also a key differentiator. We actually have those what's called certificates of conformance, oftentimes from the manufacturer, where we can say, hey, we can show you like where we got this part from, and that here is the certificate of conformance from the manufacturer. And that's something that is increasingly of high importance to customers.
In all of this sort of value add not just like moving, taking a box from one guy and giving them to the next guy, but the real value you're adding in between there. Is that how you're able to get the margins you are? 20% margins sound high for me for a distribution business, which are notoriously low margin businesses.
Yeah, that's exactly right. More niche products and more value add. And
Mhm.
so I would say that was a range I gave you there, Will. But certainly there is the value add that we're offering is what is enable us to differentiate in earn what we earn. Also, the fact that we are a lot of people aren't willing to actually hold stock. We are, and so we were able to buy at levels that help us generate good earnings because we are willing to put parts on the shelf, and so we have a history of all of our different part numbers, the amounts that we've been able to sell, and so we've been able to do a good job of forecasting inventory levels and focus on that.
As I understand, that sort of inventory management
Yes.
is another way of saying working capital management, and it's its own beast and specialization. Have you learned it, or is that expertise in somebody else in the organization?
I'm learning it, and there's a lot of opportunities for improvement. And certainly, like when I evaluated the business and compared it to other uh, distribution businesses, there was a lot of cash being tied up in inventory, and so there's an opportunity to streamline that. And so one of the things that I did was upgrade our ERP system. We were working on something that was more MS DOS based and very old. A lot of the ways we were operating were paper and pencil, and so we now have a system that is able to better track and can help us in time with a lot more business intelligence that can help us improve our knowledge and be better at the forecasting and inventory purchasing. I mean, by the end of by the end of Q2 can get to the point where we can actually have inventory turns data by SKU, and so that can be really helpful to the team.
Well, I want to hear more in a few minutes about the levers you've pulled and how you've grown revenue like you have. But a few more details on the mechanics and what happened with your actual acquisition. So the seller here was not a retiring seller. And that is something that was one of our, question marks about the business. And yours too. I mean,
Yeah.
but you were comfortable with it. Share with us what you can about that and how you're able to get comfortable with it, because it's not just us. A lot of people that I
Yeah.
talk to have kind of a hard rule: no non-retiring sellers.
Yeah, well, not retiring in the traditional sense, and he's a relatively young guy, and so
Mhm.
he's about 50 years old, and so naturally the question is, hey, your business is kicking off a fair amount of cash. You've got it to a place where you're working a reasonable amount of hours per week. Why do you want to leave this? And so that is definitely a question that I asked him in many different ways over the year that I got to know him, and I think have come to appreciate this now that I've been operating the business, and I think he took over the business from his dad when he was relatively young, so just out of college, and he did a great job owning and operating it. I don't know that he ever like truly this was the thing that he wanted to do, but it was something ahead of him, and he could help his dad as he made transition in the business over to him. Um, and so he was in a place where he was just really content with everything he was able to achieve. So stocked away a fair bit of money, had a nice real estate portfolio, and was really wanting to exit because he also had a personal they had a family tragedy happen, and so I think it in his own way he was going through what I was going through. Oh, hey, I'm approaching 40. What am I doing? In his own way,
Mm.
was having I think that type of moment as well. Um, and so just realized he was at a stage where uh, he can he can exit and go do explore and do whatever he wanted to do. Is
Yep.
this wasn't his the thing that he wanted to do. I got no pushback on the ask of, hey, you can't reinsure the business for 5 years. It's like I don't want to. So
Yeah, on a non-compete.
yeah.
Well, it's tricky, Jonathan, because anybody who, of course, the risk here, the fear is that seller is selling at a
Hmm.
peak and they know something's coming that you don't. The information asymmetry in this world is brutal.
Right.
And so any seller like that who intends to sell you a lemon is going to paint the narrative that you just said, that there's some personal reason or some
Mhm.
very good reason other than actual 65-year-old retirement that they want to sell. And so finding that credible, whatever they tell you, is the art of this.
Mhm.
And you have learned subsequently much more about a situation and how true it was, but you didn't know going in. I wonder, is there anything to learn from your experience, any tip that buyers can use to suss out when a seller is giving you a legitimate uh, reason for wanting to sell, even though the business is very profitable, and they're not looking to retire, versus not legitimate reason and they're selling you a lemon. Do you think there's anything to extrapolate from your
Yeah, yeah. I
experience?
mean, I would ask like, hey, what are your plans? Like, where are you gonna go? Like, where's the where after, because we had a 6 month time period in which you'll help me transition. But it's like, hey, after that, like, what tropical destination you going to? And so
Mm,
we would constantly pepper him to like understand like what the plans were. And this was before for deal close. And just keep asking like, hey, are you sure you want to sell? Like, this business is going, are you sure this is what you want to do? um
mhm.
it's really really hard, right? Because you
Yeah.
you are getting to know someone very very fast, and you're getting to know what you hope to be the true person. But you may be meeting their representative. There's no way for you to truly know. Just do your best to be a good judge of character and ask the question in multiple different ways. And ideally, like, if you're able to meet the team and see what they say. Because I think had I been able to do that, I think they would have given feedback that like, yeah, I can understand why he's wanting to retire.
Mhm. Well, I guess the tip that I like there is ask in multiple different ways. Unfortunately, as we know, if a seller wants to deceive you, they're going to do everything they can to deceive you, and they're going to be
Right.
on the lookout for this
Right.
line of questioning, and have crafted a deceptive answer.
Right.
So,
I, well,
that's just structural, but asking it multiple ways is a good tip.
yeah, and I would say that we had multiple different, like, we had the seller note in place. So like there was incentive for him to see me want to do well, because if the business just folded, there's just no way for me to pay that. So naturally
Yeah.
you want the business to perform. I will also say that he had a much better uh intermediary than a lot of businesses I deal with. So he didn't just have like a regular business broker; he had a middle market investment banker, and I think that
Mm,
brings a level of credibility. Is like, hey, I'm going to lend my name to this, but you can't be out here burning me by not like being deceptive and fraudulent and all those things. I don't want to sign up for those type of deals, because this is literally my business. And so I found that to also be helpful, because he was helpful in, oftentimes playing referee and nursing the deal and getting it across the finish line. But you're 100% true. If people want to be deceptive and fraudulent, it's going to be really really hard to stop them from doing that. You just
yeah.
have to listen to your inner gut, and try to spend time and build as authentic of a relationship as you can with potential sellers.
Yeah. Yeah. Jonathan, your first LOI wasn't great.
It was terrible.
Talk to us about why it was bad, how it was bad, how you improved it. Give us that little detail of your story.
Yeah, I reread it the other day, after our pre-call. It was just a Frankenstein of a lot of templates that I saw out there, and it was a just me trying to be cheap in the self-funded search, and save some expenses. And this is where I knew like Michael was going to be someone I wanted in the investment group. I shared it with him, and he immediately shot me back an email. I was like, hey man, this is terrible. Just like hire someone to help you with this, because this is, you have a good opportunity in front of you, but like, you're this LOI you have is complete garbage. And so I was just Frankensteining templates together, and it was just a mess.
Well, sage and
So
direct words from
so
from a savvy
yeah,
investor.
don't play lawyer. Ideally, just hire one, or work with way more experienced people that can help you guide you through that process. But uh, you want to really put your best foot forward, and you want to show that you know what you're doing, because already, like, as a self-funded searcher going through the SBA process, that brings enough red flags for people that any sense of you really don't know what you're doing in this amateur hour, I think is definitely going to be a knock on you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. Exactly. It's a first impression
Yeah.
case of first impressions.
Right.
And not to mention that there are legal firms, attorneys
Hmm.
in our space, focused on our space, who now offer LOI templates in their entirety for free, or if you reach out to them, including Barlow and Williams, who does
Hmm.
the monthly legal office hours with us. They'll help you out with an LOI template that they have off the shelf. So there are easy resources at your disposal. So no reason to Frankenstein it.
Please don't do that.
Yeah. Uh, Jonathan, let's turn to the alignment of investors. We've talked about it a little bit, but specifically on the point of your intentions, medium and long term, with this
Hmm.
business. This was a challenge for us. Our model is more of the traditional private equity model, where we need to see now almost exclusively independent sponsors show a plan to exit or have some liquidity event at 5 years. Our LPs are looking for their money back, and so we are need to make sure that the sponsors we're investing in are signed up for that program.
Hmm.
And you had a and which that's one model. Personally, as a potential future searcher myself, I love the long term hold model that you espoused for this deal. Just didn't happen. That also kind of didn't happen to work with our model at Minds Capital, and it doesn't for a lot of investors. And so, talk to us about how you found alignment or the right group of investors on this point of duration of hold.
Yeah, and I just think found it by just having that conversation up front. And part of it is also having conversations with people in the space. And Will Thorndike has written some papers and a lot of great podcasts out there, episodes. A lot of the research that says that the CEOs of these type of companies, like owner operators, like really start getting good in year 5, 7, and so it felt like if those when I'm actually starting to compound like my capability as a leader, to be trying to exit the business at that standpoint, feels like there's a lot of potential compounding that I would be missing out on, and then I'm exiting to potentially go do what? Do this whole search thing again.
Mhm.
So that didn't necessarily appeal. Plus, the nature of this type of business is more long cycle, and so it's going to take time to get the flywheel really spinning. And then when it does start spinning, I think there's a lot of real benefits, but those start occurring in the out year. So, like, just explaining those things to the investors that is having the conversation. I think, like, for those that were interested and on board with that concept, they wanted to participate. And for those where that didn't really meet their mandate, they let me know that it didn't meet their mandate, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But I structured it as a so the operating business is an LLC. We have a C corp on top of that, and did that so that we can help preserve QSBS. It was a stock deal because there are the big supplier agreement signed with the operating business, and so wanted to do that. And so did an F reorg, and so there were all of the all of these complications that I learned about and was able to navigate with good legal counsel. But that also in itself, and as I was able to talk through, like, hey, here's how I'm structuring the deal, and talk about the why I'm doing that. I think. Investors really appreciated that too, because if we do at some later date, 5 years on, like exit, because we have pursued the QSBS, there's a lot of uh, tax benefits that will accrue
Yeah.
to the investor base.
And so, for
Yeah.
those long-term friendly investors,
Hmm.
how do they see money come back from their investment in you?
Yeah. So
Dividends?
there's going to be dividends, definitely. And so actually working with my finance director and the that we just hired to work on, hey, now is the time to start returning a little bit of capital, but definitely they're going to see some dividends. And then at a future date, like we could have a discussion around, hey, if people still want to go on this journey, and if some people want to exit, we can look to do a recap.
Mhm. Yeah. So, in a word, really, recap is is the answer.
Yes.
You can have moments where you recapitalize the entire capital structure, and then investors who want to keep going
Can do so.
have the
Yep.
opportunity to do so, and then those who want to exit can usually get bought out,
Yeah.
and for for at a new and higher valuation, hopefully than what they bought in at, and so everybody is happy.
Right.
I ask this
But
question a lot, but it's always a pretty simple answer. It's
yeah, yeah.
you just
It's recap.
recapitalize.
Yeah, but structurally in terms of the model, like you model it as though there's like an exit, and I think I did year 7, but really just talked around like, hey, this is just indicative, but like the intention here is for us to pay down the debt, be able to return capital with dividends, and look at potential recap if that's what interests some of the investment group.
Yeah. And so there's an important point here, because yes, in your memoranda, it showed a
Hmm.
liquidity event at year 7. I didn't recall that, but okay,
Hmm.
at year 7. And so for an investor like us who needs to see some sort of liquidity event in that range, we should have been satisfied by that. But it's not just. But almost all decks will show something like that. And as you said, it's a little bit, no, I don't want to say performative, like, because you're totally transparent about your views here, but it's a little bit like benchmarky. Like, this is where we hope to be after 5 or 7 years or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But my point that I'm getting to is that the orientation of the sponsor or searcher is the story behind the story. It's, you really had a long-term view here.
Hmm.
And so your kind of growth posture, it's not that you were going to be anti-growth, as we're about to hear. You've been growing very nicely, thank you very much. But it still was, you were just had a longer term orientation, and so that will trickle down into decisions you make. And it is very different than somebody who's just pushing to do what they can in 5 years and create in those 5 years an asset that can then be traded up. So just a nuance there to mention. Anything to say to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the part of that is just some of my guiding principles in life, and so I identify as a Christian, and so just principles of stewardship like really mattered to me, and so yes,
Mhm.
on legally I own 60% of this business, but in the way that I feel and really believe is that I actually don't. I'm just stewarding the business, and so I have a responsibility to be accountable for it, and so I want to manage this through its next phase. And I just think for it to become the company that it truly can be, it will just take some time. And certainly, like
Mhm.
as I grow and develop as a leader, I just think that telling people, "Hey, in year 5, we're getting out of this." It's like I'm just starting to get good. I know, like now that I really
Mhm.
truly understand the ecosystem, we're starting to really work with some of these customers. Like some of these parts that we're stocking, the lead time on them themselves are like 40 weeks, and so it's like it's I just think this business is well suited to having a longer term orientation.
Say more about your philosophy of stewardship broadly,
Yeah,
Jonathan.
I mean, my parents were both like Sunday school teachers, and so I was just raised in the church, and just I just truly believe that, and this may not be everyone's jam, but it's mine. It's just that, hey, this business belongs to a higher power, and so for
Mhm.
the time period that I am the steward of this business, I'm very much responsible for it, and as such, I'm accountable to like making sure that it maximizes its potential. And if we're able to do that, there should be a reward for all involved, investors, for me, and definitely most importantly, like the employees. And so, as I've been the steward of this business, I try to be mindful of that and like do simple things for the employees today. So I've improved the benefits, and so we've done better. I've improved the bonuses, have improved the equipment that people are working on, and so just trying to find ways to like reinvest and just make this something that benefits a lot of people.
Beautiful stuff, sir. Love it. I heard you say F reorg.
Yes.
Define for people what that is, and tell us what you can about the process of actually doing one, which is messy.
Legal disclaimer: I'm not a lawyer, so definitely seek both tax and legal advice. But it in a nutshell is a way, and I only learned of this, and this was actually like the benefit of having a seller that has like really good advisor, because he actually presented this to me, is that it's a way for you to do a stock purchase, but then have some of the benefits of a asset sell. And so there's a lot of different things you need to sign, and the actual mechanism by which you go through it. You need to convert, because it was an S corp. You have to convert it to an LLC, which then you can sell. And so there are a lot of steps, but essentially it's a way for you to do a stock purchase, but have some of the benefits of an asset sale.
And the benefit that you wanted, the key benefit typically is leaving behind some
A lot of the
liabilities.
liability. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Well, for anybody who's interested in learning more about that, we've had a number of webinars on F reorgs. You mentioned Sam Rosati. I think
Hmm.
Sam did one on F reorgs probably 2 years ago
Yeah.
now. I mentioned Barlow and Williams. They've
Yeah.
done one, if not two, sessions where we talk about F reorgs. So go to the webinars page on Acquiring Minds, everybody, and you'll see some, and search for F hyphen reorg, and you'll see some stuff in there.
Yeah, and on that, I should just really want to take a
Mm.
moment to say thank you to Sam, because there was a change in the deal team, and he came in uh, at like the 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 last hour to come in and help get the deal across the finish line. And so I'm forever grateful to him for doing that, and had no idea that while he was helping me do that, he himself was running his fencing his fencing business, which seems to be doing really, really well. So knowing that now, it's like, man, I'm really, really grateful to him for helping with that. So thank you.
Great. Awesome plug, Sam. I know well, and of course, respect, as do so many in our ecosystem. Sam Rosati's been on multiple times.
Mhm.
We got a lot of mutuals here. Jonathan, Michael Dworkis, of course,
Yeah.
and Keith Burns,
Yeah.
your friend. I'm only getting to know now, but I had a great conversation with him, and hope we'll hopefully do more with him this year.
Hmm.
Let's talk about your take home compensation.
Hmm.
Your wise wife telling you that you, even if you quintupled a business that you were looking at, it's SDE, you still wouldn't
Yeah. What are
have
you
been
doing?
worth your time. And so, from the perspective of the money you need to take home today, now, for your three daughters, your wife, even though she's got a good income
Mhm.
herself, walking away from a very full tech salary for a guy who's been in tech for 15 years, we imagine that was a great number. How did you think about it? What does it look like?
Yeah. I mean, I think again, this is just having open conversation with investor group, and uh, fortunately, like, no one really pushed back on it, but certainly they can understand my life stage, and where I was coming from, and they saw my full commitment to the deal. So I wrote the second largest equity check into the deal. I'm obviously having, is an SBA deal, the PG. And so they saw my full commitment. So no one really pushed back on that. And so I would just say to other people, if that's something that is salary is a consideration, because there are just ideas around what that should be for a self-funded
Mhm.
searcher.
Yep.
You should just have that open conversation with your investor, and just understand that there may be some other things you need to trade on, and so maybe you need
Yep.
to be a bit more friendly on the equity. Maybe there's some other things that you need to look at to do. Higher percentage equity, interest rate on your perf, whatever you have to do. Just understand what your personal dynamics are, and what you will what you'll need to quote unquote sleep well at night. I will say though, that, like, I took a material step back from where I was at, and knew that I would need to do so. And so much so that, like, literally all of my direct reports at my former company make substantially more money than I do right now.
But they're still working for the man, Jonathan.
They are.
You can't put a price tag on that. You're out here building an empire. No, but then, of course, I take that point. You
Yeah, I
took a
mean, but
big
it's
salary
all.
step down, and that's important to acknowledge.
Yeah, I mean, these things are in some ways psychological too, right? I mean, it's real. The money's real, and like you're have different plans for your life, whatever. But some of that psychological is like, what? This is not what I'm doing, and like all the people in my team are making this, right? So it is it's something that, again, just have that open conversation with the people that you're looking to bring on.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. That's the tip, is figure out what you kind of need to be paid to support the lifestyle you do. If it's overly rich, investors are going to raise their eyebrow at that. But if they're good investors, and and get it, they're going to take into account the fact that somebody who's 27 with no obligations has different take-home income needs than somebody who has 3 children and lives in LA, a high cost of living geography, and is coming from tech. So I think it's $150,000 is kind of the
Range,
baseline
yeah.
or default for a self-funded searcher's salary as CEO that investors are expecting to see, but that is way too narrow for the broad spectrum of self-funded searchers out there.
Yeah.
So yours was above 150, and you had that conversation earlier. So
Right.
okay, Jonathan, just a couple more questions. You did a sales tax analysis, which by itself sounds like the driest thing ever, but in fact, was a crucial thing to have
Yeah.
done. What's the lesson there? Tell us that little anecdote.
Yeah. And just it stems from the fact that we are doing a lot of transactions every single day with customers all over the U.S. And so apparently, because of Wayfair, there's different tax implications. If you're doing a number of transactions in a state or over a dollar amount, you can then trigger sales tax requirements in those states and need to register and pay those. So as part of my original QOV, they did all the usual things, but also noted that, hey, like, we recommend that you actually do this and take a look and see if there's actually some sales tax liability that is out there outstanding that you may ultimately, because you're doing a stock deal, become liable for. And so that cost me an extra $8,000. But from there, identified that there was like a high likelihood of some existing tax liability, and so that enabled me then to go back to the seller. We then put some money in escrow until we can resolve that. We then use that money to pay down those sales taxes. So ultimately, that $8,000 saved me $50,000 on the back end.
Right. And there's the moral of the story. This was a case where you had, as a searcher, you're watching every penny,
Yep.
and you had a discretionary spend of an additional 8 grand right out of your pocket.
Yep.
And it's very tempting to just be like, oh, that sounds excessive. But you did it prudently, and boy, was it a good decision.
I learned my lesson from the Frankenstein LOI, and it's like, no, let me just spend the money to again sleep well at night. And so very, very happy I did that.
Great. Okay, Jonathan, let's close with just hearing how you have grown this business. I said 40%. I don't. That's directional. It may
Yep.
even be more. And it's been a year and a half since close.
It's been roughly a year and a half since close, and at top line, that's direction correct. Bottom line, it's roughly 30+%. And so a lot of that growth has just come from strong tailwinds in the industry, but also the team just buying into the vision and being a lot more responsive to customers, handling quotes, dealing with those faster. We've done some things too to improve some of our processes. So credit card transactions were all handled by paper and pencil, so those sometimes delayed the actual shipments. We now have a digital platform where we can take those, and we've a lot more structured on, and we have team meetings around like, hey, here's the products that are coming in, coming out, and so aligning the team more on like what's happening has had a lot of positive impact. We're also now more proactively pursuing business with the government, and so before there was $0. Last year was over 100,000, and so we're going to continue to push on that too. And so there are just a lot of opportunities ahead of us.
So, Jonathan, one of the final critique that I'll share that we had of the opportunity was about the how to grow a business like
Mhm.
this, and in distribution businesses, I think broadly, at least reputationally, are harder to grow. So now that you're on the inside, how do you react to that?
I think that's true, and I think you guys are right to have that opinion, because I was coming not from this space, and I am sure that if I did, I would be able to more intelligently answer the question or make a comment to that point. But now being on the inside, there are just a lot of things that were unique about this business. We were operating from everything paper and pencil, so the sales team would come in. Literally, everyone would print their inbox and by paper, like work quotes, and then type them into their computer. And so we've upgraded our system. So we're now, that's all happening like electronically and going out on a much more rapid basis. And so people are able to do more quotes today than they were able to do previously. We also have a lot more intelligence on those quotes, because we can track like, okay, this did this actually win? Did we price this right? Also have for the vast majority of the products that we're selling the most, so our top 200 SKUs, like we have a price list, so that's in the system. Like those things get automated, and so just trying to make process improvements. And it was next to impossible to me to articulate, like, hey, we're going to grow sales by just like improving the sales process, and tackle that. Because I thought, and I put this in the deck, like, hey, I need to build a website, I need to do all these other things. And it's like I haven't gotten to those yet. And it's just like process improvements and market tailwinds and just understanding some of our customers and being there to support them. That's what's taken us to where we're at today.
And so a lot of those things, while they will add a ton of value and move the needle, they are one-off wins. And so once you get on the other side of all of that good stuff,
Yeah.
it's basically about selling more product through.
Yeah.
And so I guess the way
Increasing your throughput.
once
Yeah.
you've professionalized everything, increasing throughput, so, and that basically means more customers to sell to, and more of the supplier's product that you offer to sell.
Yes, both. So it's understanding, working more closely with our customers so we can figure out what needs they have, how we can better suit those needs, getting those parts in supply and being able to supply them to the customers that need them. And then just repeating that flywheel. And then as that flywheel repeats, then add on more value added services. So there are other areas that we could be doing. So more long-term contracts, working with customers that on a longer term basis, hey, we will handle the logistics for you. So whenever you need this part, you just come to us and like we'll ship it out. Doing repair management. So in time, we can actually endeavor to be a repair station so that we ourselves can actually repair parts. And so that's another value added service. More kitting. So a lot of times, a lot of the value of a distributor is that I need actually 5 different parts. I can just go to you, get all those 5 parts. But if you can put them together in a specific package for me and then send them out, like that is tremendously helpful because then you don't have the guys on the production line fooling around trying to find the 5 different things. They're all just right there.
Mm-hmm.
And so just doing all of those things, increasing our capabilities while increasing our working more deeply and being more ingrained with our customer base, enabling us to add to our supplier base, then add on some of those value added services is just how we continue to grow.
Awesome, Jonathan. Congratulations on so much progress. It's really a great story. And even though we're not in it, and I'm maybe kicking myself a little bit. Obviously, I'm thrilled at your success.
I gotta ask, now that you are in Minds Capital, this is probably what 20 months for you guys. Now that you guys have you're in Fund Two, I believe. If
Mhm.
Are you guys more or less receptive, or do you still have sort of the same position on people that come to you with a longer term orientation?
We're probably the same.
Yeah.
And especially because we've defined it even more clearly. We're just coming off a fundraise for Fund Two,
Mhm.
and we have this articulated thesis and strategy. Um, if anything, we probably
Yeah,
we
yeah.
probably would be less receptive.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think just the opportunity to present to you guys, get your feedback on the deal was very illuminating for me because it just highlighted um, the need for investor alignment with the operator and just a real focus on that. And I just think that's something that um, searchers should really put a high emphasis on. And it's
Yes.
challenging because I know a lot of investors uh, try to push off having meetings with searchers until there's a deal in hand, which I completely understand. People are busy, but to the extent that you can start building those relationships other and truly understanding whether there's a fit, that there's alignment, I think is just so important.
It's a great point, Jonathan. I would advocate the same. I will say that, like at Minds Capital, we are in the category of investor that says we can only take calls if you have a deal
Yeah,
under LOI because of the time constraints. Just this week, we've just seen a crush of deal flow, which is a great place to be. But already we're like everybody, we're very busy, and there are only so many hours in the day, and so unfortunately, we have to pick and choose the calls that we have. But that doesn't mean that your advice. I disagree with your advice. If you can somehow cultivate relationships with investors in advance, even of having a deal under LOI, do so. But just understand that a lot of investors are gonna say, "Sorry, I just can't." But maybe there are other ways to cultivate relationships with investors. It's a tricky one because
yeah,
I see it from both sides, and just seeing it from both sides in general, it has been eye opening. Now that I am an investor and see things from the investor perspective, it's it's very different than the searcher perspective. As I said earlier in our conversation, as a searcher, I would have an orientation that's different than I have as an investor, and so the incentives just are not necessarily always the same or always what you'd expect. And so what you have to do as searcher, as you did do, Jonathan, is try to find those investors whose incentives are as closely aligned to yours as possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great, sir. We will put a link to your LinkedIn in the show notes. Anything else you would leave the audience with?
I would just offer this word of encouragement to anyone out there thinking about starting a search, in the midst of the search, in the doldrums of the search, just lost a deal, whatever. Just keep moving forward, and just keep making progress. And for those that are been thinking about it, and like I was when I originally started, finding ways to make excuses. And so I need to build a website. I need to find a CRM. Just sign the NDA, get going, and just really start taking the steps to ultimately achieving the thing that you have identified that you want to do. Because there's going to be so many ups and downs, but certainly I think I believe it's truly worth it. And the right business is out there if you just keep turning over those stones.
Great point to end on. Jonathan Taylor, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, sir.
Hope you enjoyed that interview. Don't forget to subscribe to the Acquiring Minds newsletter. We send an email for every episode with an introduction to the interview, a link to the video version on YouTube, and soon, key takeaways, numbers, and more essentials from the interview for those of you who don't have time to listen or watch it. Subscribe at acquiringminds.co. You'll also find all our webinars there on the website, both those we have coming up and recordings of past webinars. At this point, there are over 30 webinar recordings, a wealth of information on all the technical nitty-gritty of buying a business. acquiringminds.co.